6 o'clock, I will call the meeting to order, and the first item of business is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stewart.
Moved by Stewart, seconded by Gregg, that the agenda be adopted as amended.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And having adopted the agenda, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. Minutes and business arising out of the minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stewart.
Moved by Stewart, seconded by Gregg, that the minutes from the October 2nd, 2024 council meeting be adopted as printed and circulated.
Is there any issues with the minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And no public comment, no submissions for public comment period. No public meetings or drainage meetings, and no delegations. So down to item 8, reports from Public Services Department, and 8.2A, Recreation and Facilities Division, report 2024-118 from the Manager of Recreation and Facilities. Manager Caldwell, is there anything you want to highlight for council before I ask them for questions?
Yes, I'll just highlight that this report outlines several options that staff will continue to assess and explore as we kind of work towards the most appropriate timing to implement a financial assistance program. But I did want to highlight that in the meantime, we do have a plan in place to execute on option 1, which is to just better promote existing agencies like Jumpstart and ensure that residents in need do have access and awareness to those resources.
Thank you. Questions from council on the report? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, at least one of the options has considerable amount of staffing involved. Option 1, which appears to be the preferred option, how much staffing time would be involved in operating that one?
Yeah, there would be some staff time to build in more communication and resources around Jumpstart and the like agencies, and update their website, incorporate it into our communications and training of staff, but the impact is very minimal and estimated at maybe 5 hours.
Any other questions? Do I have a mover? Councillor Stewart.
Moved by Stewart, seconded by Gregg, that council receive report 2024-118 from the Manager of Recreation Facilities for information purposes.
Is there any discussion? Deputy Mayor Gregg.
Yeah, this is a great report. I think we've had conversations around what a subsidy program could look like, and without having an understanding of what types of things are implemented in other municipalities, it's a difficult thing to assess whether or not there's good compatibility with our municipality or not. The piece in the report that I think is really important is that staff recommendation of monitoring over the coming year and seeing sort of through this lens of a potential program whether or not there's viability. And I think that having this kind of information at the forefront of staff's minds is going to help as they're assessing how our programs and user groups are using and accessing our facilities. So I'm in full support of the motion and what's recommended by staff.
Any other discussion?
I agree that, as staff indicated, option 1 is the preferred way to go at this point. There was a lot of good information in the report, is that we already subsidize recreation 70% and 30% user fee pay, that our fees are comparable or lower than other municipalities. There are other options available, such as family rates, youth and senior rates, to encourage participation, and the high cost of administration at 100 hours for a pilot project I think is prohibitive at this time. And my experience in being involved in minor hockey for many years is that registration fees, if they're prohibitive, registration fees are made up of largely the cost of an organization renting facilities, for example, ice time. But in the big picture, registration fees is just a small part of the total cost of being involved in a minor sport. When you add in equipment, travel, fundraising, meals, all the other things, and anybody that's got a kid in minor sports knows that. So I support that we go with option 1 as recommended by staff.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I'm going to suggest, if council's okay with it, that we pull up 9.4A while we're on recreation, if everybody's good with that, and we'll go down to 9.4A. So 9.4A, Legislative Services, easy for you to say, Report 2024-121 from the Legislative Coordinator Deputy Clerk regarding proposed 2025 fees bylaw amendments. Deputy Clerk Wetlaufer, is there anything you want to highlight for council before I ask them for questions?
No, I'll just leave it open for questions.
Questions from council on the report? Not seeing any. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Stewart, that council approve the fees bylaw amendments as proposed in Report 2024-121 with the following change. Minor sports non-prime rate hours set at 7 a.m. to close be changed to 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and that council direct staff to prepare the respective amending bylaw.
Deputy Mayor Gregg is the mover. Do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, the following change is just to reflect a typo in the report, not anything different, a different direction with the fees bylaw. It just said till close, but till close like that also would cover the prime rate, so it's just to be 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And just to clarify, that bylaw is not in here, so there's no, okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And then back to nine, reports from Corporate and Protective Services Department. 9.1A, Emergency Services, Report 2024-114 from the Fire Chief and Manager of Emergency Services regarding future of Zorra Fire and Emergency Facility Planning. Chief Doyle, is there anything you want to highlight for council before I ask them for questions?
Yes, in consultation with the Director of Finance, it's been decided that recommendation number 2 would fit better in our budgets discussions that are coming later this year. So I'd like to remove that from today's decision making, although you're more than welcome to ask any questions you may have on it.
So just a question of clarification before I turn it over to council for questions here. Option 2 being which one?
And that council approve diverting available funding to update Uniondale Fire Station, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so your recommendation today would just be that council approve and direct the Manager of Emergency Services to research the potential procurement of land for a future Embro Fire Station?
That is correct.
Okay, and okay, that's what we got there. All right, questions from council on the report? Do I have a mover? Councillor Stewart.
Moved by Stewart, seconded by Gregg, that council approve and direct the Manager of Emergency Services to research the potential procurement of land for a future Embro Fire Station.
Is there any discussion? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I was glad to see this report come back, that Chief Doyle agrees with what Chief Kerwin said previously, that relocating or building a new Embro Fire Station at the current or the former Embro Public Works was not something that we should be pursuing, and that while the Embro Fire Station does have some deficiencies, that there's no real urgency to replace it at this time. I wouldn't be any surprise that I was pleased to see that it was, although it's been deleted, or not deleted, but moved to budget discussions, that there's some urgency to do some updates to the Uniondale Fire Station. That hall is 49 years old. 30 years ago, it was given a new roof and siding. It was originally a flat roof with brick siding. It's now a sloped steel roof with steel siding. But other than that, it's been painted once and on the interior, and it's had the parking lot repaved once. But it's the same size as it was almost 50 years ago. The trucks are a lot bigger. They have a lot more equipment, and it, as noted in the report, when the snow melts and there's a heavy rainfall, the water runs in the back door and floods the truck bays. So I was glad to see that there's at least some attention put towards that station. So.
Anyone else? Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, just thanks, Chief, for the detail in this report. I think the initial request came from helping make a decision on what we're going to do with the Commissioner Street property, not necessarily asking for this full detail on 2 of our stations, but obviously it's going to give us some guiding principles to look at when we look at the 2025 budget, as well as you're bringing an option to us in the future potentially for other locations in Embro. So that's awesome. And I understand from a question I asked Don earlier is that we have some clarity with commissioners, so now we can keep moving ahead with plans for what to do with that property.
Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 9.2, Building Drainage and Bylaw Services Report 2024-110 from the Chief Building Official Drainage Superintendent regarding an increase in 2025 building permit fees consistent with the Consumer Price Index CPI adjustment. And I'm assuming, Director Martin, that you'll take, is there anything you want to highlight for Council?
Not at this time.
Questions from Council on the report? Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Green.
Moved by myself, seconded by Stewart, that council approve the recommended changes to the building bylaw in principle, and that staff be directed to provide 21 days notice of a public meeting to be held during the November 6, 2024 council meeting.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 9.2B, Report 2024-134 from the Drainage Superintendent regarding a petition for a new municipal drain, Concession 1 and 2, Lot 19, North Oxford. And Director Martin, is there anything you want to highlight there for Council?
No, thanks.
Questions from Council on the report? I'm not seeing any. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Greg.
Oh, I didn't even turn it off. Sorry. Moved by Greg, seconded by Stewart, that council receive and adopt the drainage petition submitted by Steve Oliver, Director of Public Services, under Section 4 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, relating to property located at Lot 19, Concessions 1 and 2 in the former township of North Oxford for drainage improvement, and that council appoint Mike DeVos, P-E-N-G, of Spreet Associates as engineer to review and prepare a report of these lands.
Is there any discussion?
6 years of Mike, I should know how to say. This is the value in forcing councillors to speak.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And nothing under financial services. We covered 9.4A already. 9.4B under legislative services. Report 2024-132 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding strategic plan update. CAO MacLeod, is there anything you want to highlight for council in there?
No, the green, I should have put a legend there. Green means they're completed. The gold means it's an amber, so it is not completed but in progress. The white is not started yet.
Questions from council on the report? Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Stuart, that report 2024-132 from the Chief Administrative Officer be received and filed for information purposes only.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 9.4C, Report 2024-129 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding parking on Middleton Street. CAO MacLeod, is there anything you want to highlight for council there?
No, the report is fairly self-explanatory, and I would leave it open for questions from members of council.
Questions from council? Do I have a mover? Anyone? Anyone? Councillor Mitchell. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 9.4D, Report 2024-130 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding Zorra Municipal Centre. CAO MacLeod, is there anything you want to highlight for council there?
Just one of the catch-all categories that I used in the report was the furnishings. And there was I should have provided a better breakdown for that. The $423,000 encompassed. The furniture itself was $140,000. The media equipment for the council chambers, boardroom, committee room, and AV room was $73,000. Gould signs, $14,000. JPW, that was the door locks, key fobs, and security cameras. That was $86,000. Tab shelving for the vault was $21,000. And a catch-all of $87,000 was for computers, appliances, the new floor cleaning machine, movers, monitors, and everything else associated with the move of the building. So the upshot of all of that is that the municipality is, the project is $319,000 short, and the Director of Finance will, at the financial year end, make the recommendations to council how the project will be funded.
Questions from council on the report? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, Don, you just answered the question about why furnishings, because was so far over budget because it was a lot more than just what we considered furnishing, a lot of other things. But a question / comment is that in the budget survey that we looked at last meeting, there was a few comments in there about tax dollars being wasted on this facility. So I just want to throw out my interpretation of these final figures that you've given us. And from what I can see is that the actual cost of this building that came out of property taxes would be $719,000, and that being the $200,000 that was in the furnishing budget from 2024, $200,000 from the 2025 solar panel budget, and then the $319,000 that you just mentioned is going to come out of a reserve, and which will be that reserve will be filled up by tax dollars. But the rest of it, the almost $6.3 million, or whatever the total comes to, $6.5 million, I guess, came from the building department reserve, which was actually user fees, and the rest is land sales, equipment sales, grants, and donations. So all in all, not only did we end up with a building where we were, about $100 a square foot, $90 a square foot less than comparable buildings in other municipalities, but the burden on the taxpayer was minimal to come up with what we have here. So all in all, when we started talking about this, I was very skeptical, but now that we got the final numbers in, I'm glad we did it. So it's good news.
Any other questions on the report? Did I ask for a mover yet?
The question was, is my interpretation right? Is that we ended up building this building this building for like $719,000 of property taxes, and the rest was funded in other ways.
You would be correct.
Any other questions on the report? Do I have a mover? Microphone.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Finch, that council direct staff to transfer $319,400 from the surplus deficit reserve to fund the Zorra Municipal Center deficit, and that the repayment schedule for the reserve be included in the 2025 budget.
Is there any discussion? It's a amazing story, I think. You know, I think if somebody had come to council, a few years ago and said $719,000 just for the 88 space childcare, that somebody's going to pay us rent to run, I think we would have snatched that up, right? If somebody had come to us and said $719,000 just for the office, we would have snatched that up. We got both for $719,000 of taxpayer money. It's quite phenomenal, really. Like, I mean, we could debate what other things we could have done with that money, but coming in at $100 a square foot less than comparable builds as well, I mean, is the sort of, you know, if there's value in having it at all, to deliver it at less dollars per square foot than comparable builds is the ultimate measure of value that you extracted from a thing that's worth doing in the first place. So I think this is just amazing, and I know that since this building opened, both unofficially and officially, and residents that I've talked to who have visited it, who've seen the childcare functioning, and who have come in and come to council meetings, et cetera, have been extremely complimentary about it. Even people who said to me they were skeptical. You know, it seems like a lot of money. Is that really needed? And then they came and said, actually, that's really nice. I really like that. Especially a lot of people in the village of Chelmsford have come and said, you know, this really adds to the village. I think it's appreciated. And for a price tag of $719,000 in tax dollars, it's extreme value for the dollar, I think. Anybody else before? Deputy Mayor.
This is a really great report because these are the conversations, this corrects some of the misinformation that I'm faced with out in the community about, you know, what we're doing with some of the decisions and financial implications. I do think it's important to note that this was only possible because of the actions taken by previous council to get involved with this Maple Leaf land. Those revenues are not necessarily revenues that we would see if we tried to duplicate it. I think we had a little bit of luck on the timeline on our side, but while we were the council that was able to make the decision to invest those revenues into this project to serve this community as of today, that would not have been possible if previous councils prior to us sitting here, well, I guess maybe Marcus was sitting here, but the rest of us weren't that were willing to undertake this from the beginning.
I mean, nobody was sitting here.
Well, nobody was.
Anybody else? A question for me, like, do we want to direct that now, or do we want to consider that as part of 2025 budget? I guess a question for, yeah, just a question for council, like, is that, the reason I ask is with the fire report, we said, let's consider that later. Just want to clarify before we go ahead that we're giving direction to staff to do this. Doesn't mean it can't be reconsidered at budget, but, okay. Anybody else before I call the question? Councillor Mitchell.
And I think another important part in this is the donations from Kingwood, $300,000 towards tearing down the building that at one time we thought we might renovate, and thank goodness we didn't do that. I think we'd come up with a much better end product. And then the other $125,000 donation to the multi-use courts, and they didn't have to do that. We had an agreement that we would pay for tearing down that building. They didn't have to donate the multi-use courts. But I think this is a case of win-win, Township and Kingwood, that by locating here and having a daycare here and potentially multi-use courts here, increases the value of their development and the marketability and the value of every house that they sell. So we come out ahead, and they come out ahead, and the community comes out ahead. So I guess it's a win-win-win to the decisions that were made, as Deputy Mayor said at previous council, what to do with the opportunity that came to us. I just want to recognize Kingwood for their contribution, and thank them for stepping up even.
Anyone else? There is a motion on the floor, right? Yeah, there is. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Is there two there? I think we did two, right? Yeah. And 9.4E, Report 2024-131 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding renewable energy approvals. CAO MacLeod, is there anything you want to highlight for council in there?
So this report was prepared in response to some of the community concerns that have been expressed to members of council, and I just wanted to set out where we are in the process. And as you can see from the report, the process has not even really commenced yet. So the recommendation in the report at this point is receive and file for information purposes only, and the only other thing that council may want to consider is some municipalities have already passed the unwilling host resolutions, and something like that may encumber future councils if some type of different wind project comes forward. It could be something on a smaller scale, but by passing that type of resolution at this point with all the facts before council, there may be some corporate nuances that may not reflect too well on the township. So before council does pass an unwilling host, there are some other options that they may want to consider if and when a formal application does come forward.
Questions from council on the report? I'd like to give up the chair then to the Deputy Mayor.
Do I have a mover? Do I have a motion?
Moved by Ryan, seconded by Stewart, that report number 2024-131 REA process be received and filed. And whereas the procurement of electrical energy is the responsibility of the province of Ontario, and whereas the current independent electricity system operator procurement process requires a municipal support resolution for all energy projects before any application will be considered, and whereas the current procurement process does require an agricultural impact assessment, but only within 18 months of receiving a contract, which would be after a municipal support resolution, and whereas the Township of Zorra does not have, nor should be expected to have, the expertise or resources necessary to make an informed decision as to whether or not to provide a municipal support resolution for an energy project, therefore be it resolved that until the Ontario Government, Ministry of Energy and Electrification, and the Independent Electricity System Operator changes the procurement process to allow municipalities to be better informed on issues such as, but not limited to, agricultural impacts, health impacts, and environmental impacts, the Township of Zorra will not be providing municipal support resolutions, and that this resolution be forwarded to Oxford County, Oxford MPP, Minister of Energy and Electrification, the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
As the mover of your motion, would you like to speak to it first?
I would. I really try to learn hard from my conversations with residents and councillors, especially when people disagree with me. I find that's when I learn the most. It forces me to think, it forces me to really listen to what they're saying and think about that. Despite what some people have said, I have not had my mind made up on this issue. It pits two issues that I'm passionate about against each other: protection of agricultural land and protection of the environment. And I'm honestly really struggling with that. I believe strongly, though, that council should make informed decisions and be able to defend those decisions to residents, whatever it decides. I'm not able to defend a decision to allow a wind turbine on a neighbor's property, but I'm also not able to defend a decision to not let someone do something with their private property. On this issue, I do not believe we are informed enough, and the process does not allow us to be informed enough before we would make a decision, and that is not okay. The current issue of a potential municipal support resolution for a wind farm reminds me of the decision that was in front of Council in 2021 with respect to the landfill. At that time, I brought a motion to Council to say no to the landfill, and Councillor Mitchell disagreed. He had reasons that I think really apply well today, arguably better today than they did back then. So I quote, "I'm going to not support this motion, but I want to point out that if the motion said that the Township of Zorra supports the application by Walker, I would not support that motion either at this time, because I don't believe I have the information to make a decision, and the information I believe is in the final report." He went on, "This council has repeatedly demonstrated that we make our decisions based on science, based on information, based on advice from our staff and other experts that we hire from time to time, whether they be in engineering, legal, or financial or other areas. We've used this process in the roads and bridge improvement plans, in designing the Zorra Maintenance Facility building. We have in the past continued to use this process in dealing with the Maple Leaf property project. In fact, we use it to some degree on every decision we make. By passing this motion before the release of the final PRT report, we're not only going counter to the advice that we received, we are saying that we do not need or want the information," end quote. Of course, there is one significant difference between then and now. At that point in the landfill process, we had a draft environmental assessment in front of us. If I recall, it was almost as tall as me when it was printed out and put in binders. While it was a draft, we also had it peer-reviewed by an independent team, and they found 43 deficiencies or issues in that environmental assessment. Compared to that, we are almost totally uninformed today on the issue of wind turbines. So I find that I am unable to defend a decision either way, again, whether it's to say to a resident, "I'm going to allow your neighbor to put up a wind turbine beside you," or to say to a resident, "I'm not going to allow you to do what is in Ontario a legally permitted use on agricultural land, on their own private land." So I think we should take Councillor Mitchell's advice when he opposed saying no to the landfill, and Council should, quote, "have the information to make a decision," end quote. And this motion proposes to put us on that path.
Councillor Stewart, as a seconder to this motion, would you like to speak next?
I was listening there to the mayor, and I had a whole bunch of notes here. I'm crossing off the things that he's already said, so I would repeat a few things. So I'll try to keep it brief, but I'm supportive of this motion for a couple of reasons. I think through this whole process, and in my 2 years here, I've spent a lot of time researching things, taking information from staff and any other available resources in order to make a decision. And I don't have that information right now. I don't have enough information. We can't ask staff in this process. There is no process, as Don mentioned earlier, underway at all. There's a large conversation, of course, but no formal process has started. So I find it very difficult to develop a strong opinion either for or against. I'm trying to decide what our role as a municipal council is in this decision-making process and why we would have our sign-off as part of this process here. And I think that one view would be the province has already figured out all the other concerns other than our local concerns. That would mean that there's definitive answers on health concerns, on environmental concerns, on whether this is the right technology, all the things that I'm hearing, arguments for and arguments against from members of the public, as well as on the pro side from ProWind and their communications. So that would leave it to us to look at only the local flavor, which to me is we're a smaller municipality, we are a rural municipality, we are an agricultural-based municipality. So the only thing we should be thinking about is if this is prime farmland or not, or good use of prime farmland or not. Just as noted in the motion, we talk about not having that information till after our support goes in. That doesn't make any sense to me. So the other view is that for some reason, every municipal councillor in the entire province has to take information from two different sides and try to go on this gigantic research mission to come up with a decision on this, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I agree that this needs to be brought back to the provincial government to give some guidance. There's enough negative feedback on wind turbines in the community that I think they need to step up and answer some of these concerns before we're willing to step out and do that ourselves.
Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear my words from, 3 years ago come back, and yeah, and at that time, I was not in favor of the landfill. The reason I was the only person that voted against the motion that was passed by numerous councils was because the municipalities had hired a group of experts to comment on the environmental assessment, and that report was due to come out within a couple months. And I wanted to wait to hear what that was before I made my decision. So my question to the mover is, if we pass this motion, does that mean if ProWind were to come sometime before the end of February, which I believe, according to the report, was the deadline to apply, that Zorra Township would not supply a municipal support resolution?
It's certainly my intention, I don't have it in front of me anymore, but it's certainly my intention in writing it was that, where does it say, therefore be it resolved that until the Ontario Government Ministry of Energy and Electrification and the Independent Electricity System Operator changes the procurement process to allow municipalities to be better informed on issues such as, but not limited to, agricultural impacts, health impacts, and environmental impacts, the Township of Zorra will not be providing municipal support resolutions. So I guess that is absolutely my intention, is exactly what I read out, that until that process changes to allow us to be better informed on those issues, we will not be supplying them. I think, I guess I would leave the question then to the rest of the council and indeed to staff. Would that be their interpretation of it? But that was my intention, yes.
Okay, so if we pass this under the current procurement rules, if and when ProWind comes, we are making a commitment now that we will not be providing the municipal support resolution that they need to proceed with their application. I just want to make sure that in black and white.
So my intention is exactly as it states there, and it is not specific to ProWind. It would be to
Or anybody.
to anybody, right? That
Yeah.
we would yes. That as it says, until there are changes to the procurement process to allow us to be better informed, we would not be providing.
Okay, so under the current situation, we're not going to supply it. If there's changes, then we will readdress the situation. But as I read that, as I understand that we're not supplying a municipal support resolution under this format.
That's my intention, because what might changes be,
Okay.
I have no idea. So I would hope, my intention would be that this council would be open to considering what those changes might be.
Yeah.
And then at that time, we would say, those are good changes, those are bad changes, or each one of the five of us, or whatever the community's reaction would be. But the intention here is that until the procurement process allows us to be better informed, that we would not.
Okay. Thank you. I'm clear on that we're under the current situation, we will not be supplying a municipal support resolution to ProWind or anybody else for this procurement deadline. Okay.
So just before we move on, before I ask if anyone else would like to speak to it, Councillor Mitchell has asked a question of clarification. Mayor has provided his response in relation to how his intention with the motion. Does any other member of council have concern around how the motion is written and if they're interpreting it the same way, or any member of staff? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear before we moved on. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Finch.
I'm in support of this motion. I feel I need more information in front of me before making any decisions. I have thought about bringing a motion to council asking staff to get more information and factual information for my concerns and those in the emails I have received. But this actually is a better way moving forward versus us using tax dollars and staff time. With this motion, we are asking to have all the information brought in front of us. So thank you, Mayor Ryan, for bringing this forward. Part of sitting in this seat is to see ways to make these processes more functional for council to make informed decisions. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Stewart?
Yeah, just one last thing that I meant to say is that I want to say thanks to residents at least for speaking up in their concerns. I know, again, the process there's no formal process started at all, but discussions are happening, so that is okay. It's good to hear from the public, and I also want to thank, and this is probably going to impact ProWind's ability to have any kind of tender in this upcoming phase of the IESO's tendering process. And if it does, I also want to thank them for their openness and willingness. I think they stuck their neck out to engage with the community as early as they did. Unfortunately, I think some people saw that as they don't have all the information, they don't know what they're talking about. In fact, it was the exact opposite. They were trying to engage with the community as early as possible so that it didn't feel like they were the community would be blindsided by it. So, again, just thanks to both sides. I attended ProWind's presentation last Wednesday night, and I thought their commitment was to answer every question as openly and honestly as possible, and I believe they did that, and I think the residents were also very respectful through the entire process as well.
Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, this without a doubt has been the most polarizing, in some ways, issue that's come before council in the almost 6 years I've been here. I've been very vocal in my position on it. My preferred position, the preferred position of many of the people that have contacted members of council. I'm at, I believe, 83 emails in opposition to wind turbines, is that we've joined the group of municipalities that have passed the unwilling host motion. But I think as a interim solution to the problem, that passing this motion that says that unless there's a change in the process, that Zorra Township will not be providing a municipal support resolution, which is required by any proponent as part of their application process. So this effectively at this point shuts down the application or the success of the application to build wind turbines in Zorra Township. So I will support the motion.
I put my hand up to ask myself if I could speak. So because I'm still sitting here, I'll make sure to keep this brief. I'm a little concerned with the motion on the floor because what it does is it takes the ability away from any of our current residents to pursue a legal permitted land use farm diversified revenue stream that's regulated by our provincial government without us having the information in front of us about why we shouldn't be allowing that to happen. And that's the part that makes me uncomfortable with this. As much as having the conversations with residents, the bulk of them have been messages of concern, but some of them have been of a different tone. And when I think about the ability for our residents to provide for themselves on their properties and sustain their farms, I am very aware that with a permitted land use, that there's revenue generation opportunities for them that we will be prohibiting because of this action today. But I will be in support of this motion because while I'm very uncomfortable with what the impact of this will be, I do think that the responsibility falls to where the jurisdiction is, which is the provincial government. I appreciate the opportunity to have a local voice on an application with significant impact as such. But as outlined by the mayor, those studies and impacts that will be part of this process come after we've provided the support resolution. And so, we're really put in a strange position where I think Councillor Stewart said it best. we're here to provide some local voice, which that really narrows the scope in terms of what we should be speaking to or not. But until the province has clarified what our voice is, what our jurisdiction is, and what information we get to have access to before we provide this, that's really the focus of where this needs to be resolved, and has been, you know, a lot of what the conversations I've been able to have with the residents who've been open to having meaningful dialogue around this issue. So, you know, the end result may be that there's never wind turbines in Zorra, or there may be once changes have come into effect. But I think that this is a really good, strong position for us to take, and puts things back into puts us in communication with the province. Because this is a long motion, and it was not something that we were provided in advance, I will read it again, and then call. Would you like to?
I would like a recorded vote, please.
Okay. So moved by Mayor Ryan, seconded by Councillor Stewart, that report number 2024-131 REA process be received and filed. And whereas the procurement of electrical energy is the responsibility of the province of Ontario, and whereas the current independent electricity system operator procurement process requires a municipal support resolution for all energy projects before any application will be considered, and whereas the current procurement process does require an agricultural impact assessment, but only within 18 months of receiving a contract, which would be after a municipal support resolution, and whereas the Township of Zorra does not have, nor should be expected to have, the expertise or resources necessary to make an informed decision as to whether or not to provide a municipal support resolution for an energy project, therefore be it resolved that until the Ontario Government, Ministry of Energy and Electrification, and the Independent Electricity System Operator changes the procurement process to allow municipalities to be better informed on issues such as, but not limited to, agricultural impacts, health impacts, and environmental impacts, the Township of Zorra will not be providing municipal support resolutions, and that this resolution be forwarded to Oxford County, Oxford MPP, Minister of Energy and Electrification, the Western Wardens Caucus, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Yeah. Is it okay if I use a pink pen? Okay.
Just say yes or no. Ward 4,
Yes?
Ward 1,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes,
Ward 3.
Yes.
and that is carried.
Sorry. I have a mover?
Sorry. Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Finch. Does item 11A be received and filed for information purposes only?
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And item 12, information items. Any questions on that before I ask for a mover? I have a mover. Councillor Finch.
Moved by Councillor Finch, seconded by Councillor Mitchell, that items 12A and B be received and filed for information purposes only.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Bylaws. I have a mover. Councillor Finch.
Moved by Councillor Finch, seconded by Councillor Mitchell, that bylaw 4924 be taken as read a first and second and third time and finally passed, and further that the mayor and clerk hereby authorize and sign the affixed corporate seal thereto.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Items of community interest. Councillor Finch.
November 9th, Embro Fair is doing a pie making workshop at the Embro Legion at 10 a.m., $5 to attend. You need to get your tickets in advance. The Thistle Theatre is doing their fall production of the Ladies Foursome. Tickets are available, $25, and that's November 8th, 9th, 10th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. And November 11th, Remembrance Day service at the Knox United Church, and then to the Cenotaph for 10:45 with lunch at the Legion after.
Anyone else? Councillor Mitchell.
Just one event, Saturday, October the 19th, Chalmers United Church in Kintore is holding a bazaar from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Anyone else? I thought, Councillor Finch, you were going to mention the Ontario West Municipal Conference. If people, I think there's still room if people want to go. October 24th, evening of the 24th, and I can't remember most of the day on Friday the 25th in Chatham, Kent. I think there's still room available at that. And there was something else too. On Remembrance Day. On Remembrance Day, there is an Embro on the 11th, but also here, right there, at the new Cenotaph, in front of this building with the Beachville and Ingersoll Legions at 2 p.m. on Sunday the 10th. Anybody else on the calendar? All right. No closed meeting. Confirmatory?
Moved by Councillor Finch, seconded by Councillor Mitchell, that bylaw 5024, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held October 16th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time October 16th, 2024, and further that the mayor, clerk are hereby authorized to sign the affix and corporate seal thereto.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So, we've done all that. Other than adjournment, we're done. So I'm going to put this away and not deal with that for a while now. So, Dawn's last meeting. So I'm going to start reading something from Diane. Diane's message for Dawn's retirement. Congratulations, Dawn. Sorry I'm not able to be here tonight, but my CAO preferred that I didn't drive late at night to attend the OMAA conference, and this may be one of the few times that he can still tell me what to do. I wanted to congratulate you on all what you have accomplished over the past years, including the development of your staff. Under your leadership, the staff have learned valuable lessons that extend beyond the confines of our roles. Your guidance has shaped us into our best selves as individuals and as professionals, encouraging all of us to strive for excellence and to support each other. As you prepare to leave, we carry forward the principles you've instilled upon us, knowing the leadership you provided us with will continue to inspire and drive our success. Thank you for your leadership and empowering your staff to grow into the team that we are all happy to be a part of. Your development of a great team makes my transition to the CAO role much easier. Thank you. Congratulations. Before I read my remarks, any members of council want to say anything, or staff for that matter? Anyone? Councillor Mitchell.
Dawn, I'd like to welcome you to the world of part-time employment. I'm glad that you were able to scrounge up some work with TAPMO and some other opportunities that you're pursuing. I think you're too experienced, you're too skilled, and I think I'm qualified to say you're too young to fully retire. And Semi-retirement, part-time employment is a great stage in life. Because you essentially get to do what you want to do when you want to do it, as much as anyone can. But I have to warn you that although your work schedule and your lifestyle will become more flexible, your body will not. It's it's sort of nature's way of saying don't get too carried away with things. But I know you frequently talk to me about your late father and how he lived to be into his 90s and had a good life. So I hope you've inherited his longevity gene, and that your next 35 years are as healthy and as productive as the last 35 have been.
Don, I've been sitting in this seat for almost 2 years, and in my time in this seat, I have gone through some really hard times in my personal life and being in this seat as a counselor. With each of those hard times, you have made yourself available to me, with a few of those times being outside of office hours, for a conversation to help ground me and give me a calm voice of reason. I have told you many times that I'm not sure I could do this position without you, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you as a person that is caring, kind, and compassionate, and willing to take the time to answer any question, no matter how silly they are. You have always been eager to teach me along the way. As a counselor and a resident of Zorra, I cannot thank you enough for all you have done for this community over your years. Having a CAO that doesn't live in the community, I did question if you can care for the health and wealth of this community as much as those living in it. But you have exceeded my expectations with every conversation we have had, and I've learned you are always thinking of the health and wealth of the Zorra residents with everything you bring forward in your day-to-day duties as CAO. I am not sure I can say thank you enough for all of the years of being Zorra's CAO and building a welcoming staff environment for counselors and residents to walk in and feel like we are heard, understood, and everything we bring forward. I can't speak for those that have sat in this seat before me, but I am sure each of them would be just as honored to wish you a happy, healthy retirement.
Congratulations, Don. 2 thank yous from me. Number 1, thank you from a council perspective for your support. First term is a daunting thing to jump into, and there's lots of times that I've leaned on you and had conversations with you that helped clarify things for me. So that was great. And then thank you as a resident. I would say before getting into council, I was a resident here for most of my life, not really paying too much attention to local politics at all. And it was a great place to live. So you're a big part of that, I believe. So thanks for that as well.
So I'd like to thank Don for all the support that he's given me over the last 2 terms. I came in here with a lot of physical, literal baggage of trying to do this job with a newborn baby. And it was when I get the opportunity to speak in the community about what that experience was, it was so positive because of your leadership and your tone and your willingness to be flexible and allow for me to come in and serve my community the way that I could. And you always gave me space so that I could provide value to my community, and I'm very thankful for that. I think back to, one of the biggest takeaways that I have learned from you is at my first inauguration meeting 6 years ago. You addressed council, the incoming council, and you spoke to the sanitary sewer and stormwater project in Tempsford. And you sort of cautioned us, like, sometimes change and challenge is really big and can be really, difficult for a community to move through. And you challenged us to serve in these seats with big picture vision, long-term vision, to see the value and dream of the value for ourselves as a community well into the future. And that has really stuck with me and allowed for me to ride through a lot of the challenges of meeting, up with some resistance as we move through big decisions. Even in this council meeting tonight, a lot of the reports going through, the financial details of this building that we built here. If we formed all of our decisions just based on what was convenient and immediately digestible for us, we would be nowhere near where we are today. And that is partially because of how you do your job, but also because how you encourage us to fill these seats to their full capacity. I'm really fortunate because I'm currently appointed to TAPMO, so it's a little bit less of a transition for me because I will have the privilege of continuing to work with you just in a bit of a different way. But when earlier I was speaking with Karen Martin about missing you, and I think, we will all miss, seeing you in the office and having the opportunity to work with you. The legacy of the work, the way you the legacy of how you did your job is in so much of our work culture, of who we are as a team, of how we work together, of how we challenge each other, of how we come back to the table. It's in this building. The layout of this building is your legacy, how it works. The ways that, like when I had the chance to fulfill my dream of providing tours of this office last week, that was highlight for me. And when I was taking residents through this building and showing them how great it serves our staff and our community, all of that is because of what you have done. So there will be, for as long as any of us are in Zorra, there will be threads of your legacy that will continue being present for us, and for that we won't have to truly miss you. So thank you.
Anyone else? So Don started in Harwich Township in 1991, then came to Zorra in 1996 and became CAO in 2011. I didn't really realize that was only 3 years before I got on council. You seemed experienced. That's 33 years in total in municipal government, 28 years in Zorra, 699 meetings, with one slight hiccup in there. Depending on how council wants to view that, maybe a missed opportunity. We could have got rid of him a few years ago. One of the Municipal Act is pretty slim on the roles of a CAO. But when you look up some of the literature on the roles of a CAO and the philosophy behind a municipality having a CAO as their single employee and stuff, the one thing that keeps coming up as you read through that is about providing advice to councils, right? And sort of saying, here's things you should consider, here's things you should be wary of in making your decisions. And sometimes explicitly making a recommendation to council, here's what I think you should do. And I think a lot of councils that I observe how they function sometimes struggle with that because they kind of expect that the answer they're going to get from their CAO is going to be sort of, professional advice and political advice. But I think that Don has always been really good at giving his professional opinion and saying, this is my professional opinion. It's up to council politically what they want to do with that, but here's my professional opinion. And in my experience, and we've disagreed, but every time we have, he says, well, I think you're wrong, but anyway, that's what council decided, and that's it. And they went off and did it. That is the consummate bureaucratic professional, is to give the advice to the elected officials that they should be given, and then just do whatever they say anyway, no matter how stupid we are and what we decide to do. And he has always done that in my experience. In terms of, innovations and achievements, it starts off with some relatively small things, like when the township switched to LED lights everywhere, which at the time though was a big deal, switching to LED lights everywhere. But he made that change. Working with Earth Power to put solar panels on the roofs of both of our recreation facilities. Thamesford Water and Wastewater Servicing, which was extremely contentious at the time, but he gave that professional advice to the council today to say, like, here's what I think you should do, and here's the reasons I think you should do it. And council discussed it, and council made the tough decision to do that. Because of that decision all those years ago, that's allowed this village to develop with density, which has protected agricultural land and allowed a diverse form of housing types that would not have been possible had that decision by council on Don's advice not been made all those years ago. Some of these decisions take a long time to bear fruit. That's the nature of municipal government, and Don has been giving that advice to successive councils for decades. On the landfill, I spent a lot of time with Don on the landfill, like time I'm never getting back in my life, let me tell you. But again, it was another example of where he gave very detailed advice to council at the time about things to be wary of, how to navigate this, when we needed to get a legal opinion. And I think it led to a place where council made a considered decision. Again, whether right or wrong is not to be debated today, but Don was integral in the council of the day, having a process which included the peer review team, all of those things that led council to a position where it was able to make a decision. The Zorra maintenance facility, I mean, that took a long time for councils to decide what to do with that. In the end, I think we're very happy with the facility that we got for a whole lot of different reasons. And Don, again, stick-handled council through all the options, all of the parameters. One of the biggest things I think that Don has done for the township, was highlighted by Councillor Mitchell tonight, is financing. Selling underutilized assets and property to fund other projects. To say, look, we own a thing, it's of no value to us, it's not producing value for residents. We can sell that thing and turn that value into other value for residents. We know tonight, with the example of the building that we're sitting in right now, that how effectively that has worked. I think when I think about conversations I have with other mayors, councillors, wardens around the province, they are frequently stunned when I tell them, how did we fund that? Well, we sold stuff that we didn't need anymore. It wasn't providing value, so we sold it and we repurposed it. That's because Don advised us to do that. That's because Don came forward with that. And one of the biggest examples of that is the property we're sitting on right now. I distinctly remember sitting in the council of the day when Don said, okay, we've tried to refill the Maple Leaf property. We've tried to sell it for a whole bunch of reasons. We worked with Rural Oxford Economic Development Corporation. For a whole bunch of reasons, it wasn't going to happen. And Don came in with what I think I can fairly characterize what every member of council thought was a crazy idea. What if we bought it, sold it to a developer because they're going to have to develop it the way we tell them to? And I think collectively council was like, that's crazy. That's never going to happen. But sure, go try. And we all thought there was way too much risk, never going to happen. As Don kept coming back and saying, okay, I've narrowed the risk over here. Okay, we'll see what you can do. Came back, okay, we've narrowed the risk over here. We've narrowed it over here. And over time, it reached the point where I think there was 3 of us here at the point at the decision making, where we sort of looked at it and said, I think the risk is pretty minimal now. I think the upside is pretty positive. I think we should do this. But for those of you who weren't here at the time, I'm telling you, at the time that it happened, we thought it was crazy. This is just not going to happen. This can't happen. As a result of it, we ended up with no abandoned industrial site in our largest settlement area. We're probably going to see over 1,000 units of housing to accommodate the required growth of the province, of all kinds of varied types, with affordability because of those varied types. And all of this was before it was cool. This was all before the province acknowledged that there was a housing crisis and that something needed to be done to provide density and quantity and affordability and variety of types of housing. Again, that density. If this project hadn't been done with the requirements that we put on Kingwood when we sold it to them, we would have required, and we'll know for sure when the application finally comes forward, but we would have required at least 50 acres more of land to accommodate the units that are going to be accommodated in here. 50 acres. And brownfield redevelopment, which when you talk to our counterparts around the province, they will all tell you brownfields can't be done. You just can't make developers do it. You have to sprawl because nobody's willing to redevelop brownfield land. We're sitting on brownfield redeveloped land right now. Everything behind us is brownfield redeveloped land. It's potentially going to unlock a school for us, another childcare for us, better recreation facilities for us. And all of this was because Don said, I got a crazy idea, but what if we just think it through? On top of all of that, We ended up making a massive profit off it, which then successive councils have been able to repurpose towards things that they felt were of value to residents, as opposed to an abandoned industrial site, including this ZMC, where we're sitting right now, financed almost entirely by sales like that, and providing a childcare to the community, which is a much needed service and unlocks economic development potential. I was very privileged when I came to council. It took me a few years to realize how privileged I was by the council staff relationship. It's always been so easy. It's been easy. Like we just talk with our staff. We just ask them stuff. They give us answers. We make decisions. They do it. The longer I did this and the more I talked to people around the province, I realized that I was taking something for granted that was really, really, really to be cherished. And I think we really need to continue to cherish that and how important that is. It's the kind of thing that just slips away, but it's also the kind of thing that takes 28 years to get to. It's not the work of, let's throw a barbecue and show staff that they're appreciated. There, now you're appreciated. It's 28 years of understanding your staff, understanding their needs, coming up with things like, flex work, coming up with things like work from home, coming up with things like compressed work week. Right? Making those things optional for our staff to choose what works for them. As long as you're delivering the results for residents, work how you need to work. And it means that we are attracting and retaining over and over and over again the best quality staff that we can. And that's no accident when other municipalities right now are struggling to retain any staff. We're attracting and retaining more and more. That's because Dawn has put the day-to-day effort of 28 years into making that happen. If I have achieved anything in my time on council, it is due in no small part to advice and conversations with Dawn. I think it happens less now than it used to, but there was many times I would come into Dawn and say, Dawn, I got a great idea. I learned about this new thing. We got it. And yeah, I get it, Marcus. But have you considered this? Have you considered that? You need to, and I really learned to frankly lean on that was the role. The role of the councillor is to come up with the crazy ideas, and the role of staff is to say, but you don't actually know what you're talking about. Have you thought of these things? I mean, like, it's a great idea, but let's put some parameters on that. Let's think about what it would actually take to make that work. And I really, especially when I became mayor, really came to lean on that advice, that context, that perspective of staff and of 33 years in total and 28 years in Zorra, of saying, here's the potential pitfalls of that, and here's what I'm going to advise you, and then it's up to you to do what you want to do with it. But I think that without a doubt, none of those things is Don's biggest achievement. The biggest achievement, in my opinion, is that he has always known that none of us does any of these jobs forever, no matter what we do, right? There's the famous apocryphal quote of Charles de Gaulle that in the language of the day, the cemeteries of the world are filled with indispensable men. None of us does it forever. We're always going to have to hand it off to somebody else. I think Don has always been acutely aware of that, and that, A, because he's a good person, but B, because he's a good boss, he always wanted to cultivate a workspace where people could actually do their best, as Diane said, and where they would be encouraged to do their best, even if that meant challenging status quo. And I think I would encourage you, and I would encourage all of us and staff and residents to remember that what you leave behind is all those achievements. But I would argue, more importantly, because people are going to live in this township, whatever it looks like, for the foreseeable future. And what you've left behind is a staff that this council and the next council are going to benefit from, to make all of the similar kind of choices and decisions for the future. That matters far more than anything we ever did in the past, is setting our community up, our children up, for similar decisions for the future. And the culture of this workplace, of the professionalism and the compassion and the willingness to innovate, but also the ability to be discerning about those innovations, sets this council up and other councils up in a way that we could not ask for. And I know other municipalities would kill to have that. And I really suggest that that is, without a doubt, your largest achievement is the staff that you leave behind that are frankly, take this how you will, ready to continue on the day that you're gone and just keep doing it. That is a titanic achievement, to leave behind this many people who are ready to just do that work. I'll leave it there because I've cried twice at council meetings and it doesn't need to be a third time. And I'll turn it over to you, Don.
Thank you, everyone, for the kind words and all the credit that's been, heaped upon me tonight is, it's to be shared. Steve with ZMC or ZMF, Karen has been a rock here. All those policies that you talk about that are great, she did all the work. She's been, it's driven her crazy, and she's worked with me over the years to put a lot of these good policies in place, and the staff are just, incredible. So my successes are their successes, and it's council's successes, so I'll get into that in a bit. So I'll try to make it through this. I'm very, very lucky and thankful to have worked at Zorra Township for the past 28 years. To have spent almost half my working life at one place has been special. My coworkers, council, and the public have made this more than just a job and a paycheck. Little did I know, my first council meeting was on June 4th, 1996, would lead to another 698 meetings for me. It's a long time. I served with 9 terms of council, 4 mayors, and 26 different councillors. The council that hired me in May of 1996 had 11 members, and I'll never forget being interviewed by all 11. 2 members made an impression that very first day. John Knox, who came in to see me today because he was by far the youngest, and he put me at ease by telling jokes during the council meeting, and Margaret Lupton as the only female amongst a group of elderly men, and her kind ways that she showed me that day. There are just so many people that have helped me on this journey and helped me build my career at Zorra. I would like to thank my family, Heather, Alex, Brandy, and Nick, for always supporting me and being understanding for all the time spent working late hours, attending night meetings, and going away for conferences. My wife, Heather, I'm especially grateful for your support and love. I know it could not have been easy at times with 3 kids at home and me away so much. Plus, I was a bit of an idiot and golfed and played way too much hockey. So thank you. To the current municipal office staff, Karen, Lisa, Mike, Diane, Steve, Jenna, Alicia, Matt, Paul, Josh, Sophia, Ali, Kim, Michelle, Nicole, Spencer, and Dave, I can't begin to thank you for all you do. You are truly one special, talented group of professionals who are dedicated to making Zorra a better place to live, work, and play. All of the successes I've been able to achieve have been a result of each staff member going above and beyond and being there to support me. One last person I want to acknowledge is Maggie. I have known Maggie her entire life, so as my career comes to a close, it's been an absolute joy to watch Maggie begin her career not only in municipal government, but here at Zorra. You have a bright future. And I would be remiss if I did not recognize our public services staff, to the management, Steve, Josh, and Derek in Roads and Recreation for all they do for the residents. Providing safe roadways, summer, winter, at all hours of the day is something that we all take for granted. We also don't get to see all the Christmases that are missed, birthdays that are missed, and time spent away from their families. It's really appreciated. For the recreation staff, Zorra residents are so lucky to have clean, modern facilities to play in, as well as a growing park and trail system that are maintained by our professional staff. The public services staff have also been instrumental in the operational success at Zorra and have always been most helpful to me. For that, I will thank you, both past and present employees. Although I don't interact with our volunteer firefighters on a day-to-day basis, that group dedicates their time to serving Zorra community, and they too have helped me over the years. I would like to thank all those members, past and present. To the past members of Zorra staff, I thank you as well. As a very young CIO with lots of bright ideas on how to change the world, it was not always an easy road. It took me a while, but I did learn that I was not always right. The guidance provided to me by more senior staff allowed me to grow as a CIO and be a much better listener. I know that part is hard to believe, but I do listen. To the current members of council, you should be very proud of your work, dedication, and positivity. The respect and goodwill that you show to our staff is very, very rare, and for that, I and all of our staff are so very grateful. You provide us with great latitude to think outside the box and allow staff to be not worried about negative repercussions. This in turn has allowed Zorra to grow and prosper to the betterment of our taxpayers. The community leadership to make the right corporate decisions and not ones for political expediency has set the bar so very high for future councils. Past councils have also shown great leadership for infrastructure renewal and having great foresight to undertake projects like Thamesford and Embro Servicing, Embro Zorra Community Centre Renewal, Thamesford Fire Station, Zorra Maintenance Facility. Yes, these projects have resulted in higher taxes for Zorra residents, but the asset management planning that has taken place will benefit future generations from years to come. Mayor Ryan has been a great champion of staff since he first took office. His outreach to staff was appreciated and a new way for our staff to interact with the councillor. We have built on that communication link and we are all better for doing so. Very interesting fact about Mayor Ryan. When he was elected in 2014, it was the first time that a councillor was younger than me. He made me feel very old at that time. And right now, there's only one councillor that is actually older than me, not mentioning any names. I've told this story many, many times. When I started in Zorra in 1996, the office had one computer, which is just hard to believe. It was shared by 14 staff members. Minutes and agendas were prepared on a typewriter, and Mike Hughes, the building inspector, delivered the agenda packages on the Friday night before council meetings. Well, Mike is still here, but he's not delivering agendas anymore. Mike had more than one run-in with Councillor John Knox's dog and was actually bit by the dog when he was delivering agendas. The changes that have taken place in municipal government are immense. I've been very fortunate to have been in the right place at the right time to hopefully help Zorra in a good place through all the changes that have taken place. So tonight, as I sit through my final council meeting, I want to wish the incoming CAO, Diane Larder, all the best. It is your turn to take Zorra to the next level, and I have every bit of confidence that you will do your part to make it a better place than I left it. You have an amazing group of professionals that will stand with you every step of the way. Karen Martin has been my right hand, and as a matter of fact, my left hand for the past 14 years. And to know that the two of you work so close together and are so well aligned makes leaving that much easier. Karen has been an incredible support system for me, and I know she will do the same for Diane. All I can say is thank you. There are no words that can capture my gratitude for everything you have helped me with. You pushed me along when I needed to be pushed, and you made me better at my job. It's the best compliment I can give. Lisa Teeple has worked in the background to keep me organized and to crack the whip when necessary. It's been no easy task, but Lisa did her best to keep me out of trouble and provide me with gentle and at times not so gentle reminders of all that needed to be done. Thank you to Lisa and Karen for helping me along the path. I will never forget your support over the years. And Lisa, I'm now off your list. So, Your Worship, time to bang the gavel and adjourn my career at Zorra. Adjourned.
Moved by Councillor Finch, seconded by Councillor Mitchell, that this session of council be now adjourned and herewith closed at 7:22 p.m. and the next meeting of council be called for November 6, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. in the council chambers at the brand new Zorra Municipal Center.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is